Hello, good morning, Claire Molinar from Unique Self-Emergence. This is the third day of our 5 days challenge to learn how to dismantle your false core pattern. So let me give you a short recap of where we're at, and I'll take you through the next step of our practice. So Barbara, as an introduction, has told us how, as we come into form as little tiny babies, we go through what we call in our teachings the first shock of separation, which we see as a shock that comes from unbounded consciousness coming into form, coming into this little tiny baby body with all the restrictions and the limitations that it represents. And that shock of separation from essence, from which we come from, is a huge shock to our system, which is somewhat mitigated by the fact that as very young babies, we don't fully feel our separation from our caregivers. We're fused with them. And so we refer as the second shock of separation the experience that we have as bigger babies around the age of 5 months to 12 months, where we actually become conscious of being separate beings from our caregivers. So there's a first shock of separation, which is the shock of essence becoming form. And then the second shock of separation, which is the actual act of realizing that I am a me, and there is a lot of not me's. So from these two experiences, as consciousness grows into a child's body, we develop certain beliefs which come from conclusions that we draw to try and explain ourselves, the unease, the difficult experience that we're living as children. So on the first day of the challenge, I took you through a process that allowed you to get a first sense of which sentences, which beliefs you may have developed very early in your development, which core beliefs have informed the way you have developed as a fully individuated human being that you are now. So some of you have shared your experiences, and it seems like you have been able to actually pinpoint certain patterns of thought, feelings, emotions, bodily postures and structures that have developed as a result of that sentence. So that first exercise was on day 1 of the challenge. And yesterday I took you through a practice, the beginning of our practice, which is a practice which starts with a process of observation, in which you become aware of a trigger during the day, and you observe that trigger as it relates to how you feel about it, what emotions arise, what you tell yourself about the trigger. So what sentences, what sentence is informing, what story are you telling yourself? And the point is to see that there's often a relation between your false core sentence, your initial false core sentence, and the story and the judgments that you tell yourself at the moment of that trigger. And the last step is to actually become aware of what your body does. So there's an emotional, a mental, and a somatic component of a pattern that we came to call the false core pattern. So this is where we are at in the practice today. And I'm going to add another step to this practice. So I'm going to ask you today to do the same thing as yesterday, meaning you're going to identify a trigger during the day, and it can be a strong trigger, but hopefully we're not triggered strongly every day. So it can also be a slight trigger. Just observe a moment of contraction and go through the same process of taking a deep breath in order to come present to the moment. A few deep breaths if you can. Observing what's going on an emotional level. What is it that I feel? On a mental level, what am I thinking? What story am I telling myself? And what is my body feeling? So again, bodily sensations can be weight, they can be lightness, they can be tension, tightness somewhere, pain. So just teach yourself, train yourself to become more aware of those sensations. And there might be a sense that you want to do something with that, with that feeling, with that, with what is arising from that trigger. So there might be a sense that you want to fight away, that you want to fight against, meaning there's some frustration, anger, need to control. So there is a power dynamic that happens, or you might feel that you want to go away from it. So there's more of a flight reaction. So a sense that you want to disconnect, or there's a fear or a withdrawal. Or there might be a freezing reaction, like a shame reaction, a place where you get confused, you have nothing to say. So notice, what is the behavior that is related to the trigger? So trigger, mental, emotional, and somatic reaction, and then a behavior that is attached to that trigger. All of this makes up what we call the false core pattern. And it's all coming through one thing, the false core sentence that developed a long time ago, at a time when you didn't even have words in your mind, at a pre-verbal time, when you drew a conclusion about the reason why you felt in such a dismay due to the first and the second shock of separation from essence. This is the overview of where we're at. So now I want to take you through next step. So once you're here in your exercise, once you're at that moment of observation and you have a sense, and you tell yourself, you tell yourself what's happening. So in your mind you say, for example, I'm feeling heaviness in my chest. I feel like crying. And I'm telling myself I'm not worthy. I'm just making that up. In that moment, I want you, and I'm doing it already by habit, so I want you to bring your hand to your chest. And do it now as I'm talking to you. Just feel your hand in your chest. You can bring one hand, two hands, as you wish. And feel the feeling of that touch. Just take a moment to actually feel what it feels like. And there's something funny about us, human beings, is that this slight, gentle touch, particularly here in your chest, brings us back home. And it's a very natural actual gesture that all mammals, not only humans, but even animals do to their babies. They touch them to soothe them. So it's very self-soothing. So bring your hand to your chest and now close your eyes and ask yourself, and of course it can be silent, what is it that I deeply need right now? What is it that I deeply need right now? And don't try and find an answer, just listen. Just listen to what comes. Take a few deep breaths and feel what happens in your body as a result of that coming to yourself, touching yourself, and asking yourself, what is it that I deeply need right now? So I'm going to leave you here for today. This is the end of the practice. So there was a lot of recap in order to come to the next step. If you need to re-listen to the recording, you might need to re-listen to the recording just to make sure that you know what to do today as you continue to learn that practice. So as always, I'm very curious. We are very curious to know what's happening for you. Please share. And as you've probably seen already in the sharings that have already happened, we learn a lot from each other's sharing. So thank you for being here, for taking the challenge, and I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, one last thing. Please write down in your journal at the end of the day what you've learned. And a way to actually write it down can be on the Facebook page if you don't want to write on your journal. But my point is that when you write, you actually integrate more what you're learning. So see you tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Bye.